there is no one but yourself who is responsible for yourself. So no one is going to come and tell you, hey, Ben, this is what you should do, or Bruno, this is what you should do, and this is what's going to make you happy. So I felt, at that moment, this is what would make me happier. This is what would make me more fulfilled. And I pursued that decision. It wasn't easy, but I had support from my parents. They told me, Bruno, do what you believe is best. And I did so. And I often did that in my life. And sometimes it was painful, but I can really tell you that I don't regret anything. And every day I wake up, I can look myself in the mirror. And that's such a powerful feeling.
I'm now joined by Mr. Bruno Pesec, the president of Pesec Global and a co-founder of the board game called Playing Lean. Mr. Pesec, how's your day been?
Well, Benjamin, first, thank you for having me here, and second, thank you for a considerate question. It's not often that you hear how has your day been specifically like that. So, I have to say it's been a good day so far. I've been working on things that I love to work on, so I can't really complain too much. How about your day?
Pretty good. It's early in the morning for me. Mr. Pesec, you are out in Croatia. If
No, I'm a Croatian, but I'm in Norway currently. So Oslo, Norway. So it's around 5 p.m. my time. So it's right at the end of the workday.
Yeah, but yeah, my day is going pretty good. It's early for me. It's the opposite. I'm just beginning my workday, but hopefully I'll have a good one, and hopefully you have a good night's sleep, and then a good work day tomorrow. So let's talk about go back all the way. Now you're a innovation. You help companies with innovation, help them create innovative culture. You also co-found board games. You're also an engineer. But let's go back to I don't know how many years back, but when you were a kid, what kind of kid were you?
Okay. So going back to the kindergarten, elementary school, and all of that, I have to say that I was quite a curious and noisy kid, and sometimes that got me in trouble. But sometimes it also helped me learn much faster and discover the world a little bit differently. And apparently, so this is a story from my parents. I can't say it was or wasn't like that. I just know their story. But in Croatia, before you go to the elementary school, they have this psychological testing. And what my parents told me is when I was up for testing, I went to the psychologist and I drew a big robot. And I explained to them how this robot will work. So they told me, or they told my parents, well, this kid can go to school, no more kindergarten for him. So I started going to school a bit younger than the rest of the kids. I never felt, that really disadvantaged me, or I never really felt it in some big way. But I could feel that being curious, being noisy, asking a lot of questions, as I said, sometimes got me into a little bit of trouble. So, in addition to being curious, I was also quite an energetic kid. So, a lot of energy to pursue my curiosities.
You were this outgoing, creative, in your own words, noisy kid. Uh, you know, and that just how you are. Let's talk about this. Why do you think you were that way? Was it genetic? Were your parents similar when they were kids? Was it environment?
Yeah, I think that's a quite good question again. So I would say it is a mix, or at least in my case, it was a mix of uh, naturally having just a bit more predisposition for being curious, but also nurtured probably more by my grandparents than necessarily my parents. So my parents encouraged that, but my grandparents, they were reading me a lot of fairy tales and things like that, and that was pretty common at that time in Croatia and in general that part of the world. And it was always this, fantastical stories where you couldn't really tell apart, fantasy from reality. Of course, when dragons come here, even as a kid, you understand, okay, this is fantasy. But some other things, a well that makes wishes come true, or a table that produces food. It's a thin line between fantasy and technology. So to me, that was always wow, like this is so fantastical. How does that work? And then I've taken that also to, let's say, real world. You see something, you see a toy, or you see a car going down the street, or like a big vehicle, and you start wondering, how does that actually work? What makes it move? How does it get produced? How does it get assembled? So, I would describe it, to back to your question, a little bit of natural predisposition together with a little bit of upbringing.
When your grandparents were telling you these fantasy stories, these folk folk tales, did they know that it was having this, making you more curious, making you more outgoing, or was it more of just it was something that the grandparents would do? Did they know the effect it would have on you?
So I don't think they were doing it for that specific effect, but I think that they could see, as I didn't really hold it in. I always shared my ideas and and everything. And I had conversations with my grandfather, and I would tell him about these fantastical places in my head and why do I think it makes sense. And then what I really loved as a kid are, those illustrated encyclopedias. So it's not just words, but you had big pages of dinosaurs, of different historical areas, and it was so easy then to see it and discuss it. And I remember I had so many discussions with my grandfather. How did this work? Why did they do it like that? And he didn't always know the answer, but he always had some story, some tale to tell. And again, I I think he was doing that to entertain me, not necessarily to nurture my curiosity or something like that. But that is the effect it had to me, because I was never prevented. So my parents nor my grandparents tried to say, oh, you shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't behave like that. You will get into trouble. But they were encouraging that, and they did warn me, son, this might get into trouble from time to time. And my parents, they also got in trouble sometimes for asking questions, and especially my grandfather, the same that was telling me stories. Even as an adult, he used to get into trouble by asking questions, so he was probably just being himself.
So you were this curious, outgoing kid. I mean, surely you would have been doing pretty well in school.
So that's quite interesting. I would say that I was slightly above average when it comes to school. As I said, asking too many questions can get you in trouble, especially in school, because sometimes teachers, they have so many kids, so many classes to teach, and sometimes they lose the passion maybe after decades of teaching, and after some time they start answering just because, or that's how it is. And I remember, for example, mathematics. So I wasn't that good in elementary school, but I was confused. Why am I not doing well? Like, I think I understand the logic of mathematics, but the teacher always said, well, you found some way to calculate this, but that's not the way that I have shown you. And as a kid, what do I know? I was just going through it. But then when I came to high school, so in Croatia we have 8 plus 4. You have 8 years of elementary school and then 4 years of high school. When I came to high school, I suddenly started getting high grades, because the teacher there, she only cared about getting the correct numbers in the way, in mathematically logical way. But sometimes there's two or three different ways to calculate something. So I could see that my grades slowly started going up without me doing too much of a difference. So what I would say, that where my curiosity was helpful in the school was connecting theory with practice, because I was always, okay, this is really cool, this is so interesting on this page, or what you're telling me, or on the whiteboard, but how does that happen in reality? you know that's why I loved physics classes. When a teacher would bring some box, some electromagnetic box, and we could turn the crank, and you would see small sparks flying. This kind of practical stuff, because you can immediately see the theory that you're being taught.
That makes sense. And just trying to, and I think a lot of I used to always think that too, of asking teachers like why am I learning this? What's the significance of this lesson or practice or piece of homework? And you know, you were an outgoing kid. You were curious, you were good in school, you were constantly questioning things, and you go to university and you decide to study engineering.
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. So again, here, I guess how I usually say, I was a lucky kid, and I am a lucky person in a sense that I often have a strong idea of what I'm interested in. So when I finished elementary school, I immediately knew I want to study robotics. So I went to high school and studied robotics. And then when I was studying high school, I knew, I want to be an engineer. So I want to go and study aeronautical engineering, how to make aeroplanes. So I went and started studying that. And then what I realized, so maybe this will be interesting to your audience, especially. So what I realized as a university student, 2 or almost 3 years in, I realized I'm not so interested in aeroplanes. I was more interested in how do airplanes work in the whole system. I realized I was not so interested in building an aeroplane, but actually from the moment when, for example, you decide to fly, how do you find the ticket, how do you book a ticket, how do you get on a plane, how do you manage a float of planes, how do you maintain them, how do you operate them, etc. I realized that, and I decided, oh, it's time to switch my studies. And it was a little bit painful, but again, asking many questions, going to the right and wrong people and asking them, how can I do that? I'm really passionate, I'm really curious, I want to study this instead. And I managed to get it. So I actually switched my studies in the middle from aeronautical to industrial engineering. So it is possible. It was a little bit challenging, but I always followed what I'm interested in, because in my opinion, so I know that your audience is a bit younger in nature, but I think it's a good message to hear young earlier in life. There is no one but yourself who is responsible for yourself. So no one is going to come and tell you, hey, Ben, this is what you should do, or Bruno, this is what you should do, and this is what's going to make you happy. So I felt, at that moment, this is what would make me happier. This is what would make me more fulfilled. And I pursued that decision. It wasn't easy, but I had support from my parents. They told me, Bruno, do what you believe is best. And I did so. And I often did that in my life. And sometimes it was painful, but I can really tell you that I don't regret anything. And every day I wake up, I can look myself in the mirror. And that's such a powerful feeling.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. And I have a follow up question. You were changing, you went to university, switched majors. Whenever you had a different passion that was higher, you switched. Was there ever a fear that you would never like find the one thing if you kept changing?
So no, but that is also I didn't change every month or something like that. So this really came after almost 3 years of studies. I realized, hey, this isn't the thing, that's the other thing. So I have actually identified and found the other thing. So specifically, it didn't happen overnight, but as I was going through the courses, etc., I had one course that was called industrial engineering, and there were many different professors teaching it, and I was just mind blown. I was like, wow, like this is actually the thing. And why I shared it is, uh, we learn in a way that's called geometrically. So we don't add things. You learn, let's say you learn A yesterday, and you learn B today, and C tomorrow. It's not just A plus B plus C. It's AB, AC, AC, ABC. You unlocked so many combinations. So when I came to that moment, I was already a bit older, had more experience, and in my head it was like, wow, now I see it. If somebody told me, Bruno, this is what you actually want. If somebody told me that 5 years earlier, I probably wouldn't listen to them, because I didn't experience it myself. So that is something, personal experience is very important. And that is why it's always difficult when you have someone advising you, be it in business or be it somewhere else. We have to think constantly, are they speaking from their experience? And then try to understand it from their perspective as well. because especially when you're starting a business or you want to launch a product, service, whatever, there will be many people sharing their thoughts with you, sharing their ideas, sharing their advice, and politely listen. But you have to also think, who are these people and from what experience are they talking? Because talk is cheap, but talk from experience, oh, that's valuable.
I think that's a huge thing that a lot of kids. I learned this in another interview that I did last year, I think, and I've stuck with that ever since. And I think it's super important that kids listening to this now hear that. In that, when you're young, you believe everything. I when I was young, I'm pretty young, but when I was younger, I believed everything. Anyone could have said anything, and I would take that as as a solid, you know, piece of gold, right? And so that was really important to me, was really distinguishing as I got older, as I kind of developed my own mindset, was really making sure that what you're hearing, advice you're getting, is really, you know valuable advice, especially when you're going into things that are a little more complicated. So let's hop back a little bit to high school. And in that experience, you talked about how you would ask questions, and there were a lot of teachers that weren't really kind of cultivating that curiosity. Do you think the school system, not only back in Croatia or Norway, US, do you think it's a little bit flawed?
Of course, so we can see that our educational systems globally are flawed. I also want to say, so people usually go to the extremes. They want to remove everything and build something new. That to me doesn't make sense. What we should focus on instead is we can now see the flaws in the system. So let's slowly start fixing them one by one. And I think one of the important and easy fixes are start adding more critical thinking to the curricula, because that is somehow getting lost. What we mean by critical thinking is, okay, you had the situation A, situation B, and situation C. Let's analyze them and let's see different options, different scenarios, different fantasies, because people have now, and this isn't just for young people but adults as well, we have lost the ability to hold two opposing ideas at the same time. What I mean by that is, imagine that you have an idea: water is hot or water is cold. So a person that can think critically, they can have both ideas in this hand. They can accept, there are moments when water is hot and there are moments when water is cold. I mean, it's a really simple example, but you can really see that a lot of people are now taking the stance that they will say water can only be cold or water can only be hot. So, I mean, both of them are correct sometimes, but it's important for young and adults as well to be able to develop their thinking and entertain ideas that seemingly seem to be opposing or challenging each other, because that is how we grow as people and professionals. And then another thing that I would also suggest focusing in educational systems is adding more and more practicums, even more practical stuff, be it field, what do you call it, field lessons, field courses, field exercises, be it practice at the local small companies or things like that. Visiting companies is great. I remember as a kid, both in elementary and high school and university as well, I loved it when we would go to some company and then we could ask questions to the workers there, to the people working on the manufacturing line or on the service, and you can ask many questions and it's so interesting. It's great to see people do real work and ask them questions. And that's something that's easy to add to our educational systems that would immediately improve them. I don't know if you missed that. What's your experience in the USA? So maybe you can add more on that.
I mean, here I would say it's more or less the same with a few like cultural differences. It's more or less the same. I do want to touch on the critical thinking part of it because I think that's super important. And critical thinking, like I said, is super important, but it's a difficult thing to understand how exactly you could implement that in the school system. So if you are like the admin, you're the principal of the principals, you are in charge of the entire school system in the world, and you could just change with the tap of the fingers. You could change something. And what specifically would you change that would cultivate more critical thinking? Would it be reading more? Would it be um, more, like you said, in-person experiences? Would it be getting rid of multiple choice quizzes? Explain.
Okay, so I would focus on one thing and one thing only that would nurture all of that. Uh, it's a practice for nurturing what I would call critical reflexivity. And the practice is very, very simple. Anyone listening can start doing it for themselves right now. Have a notebook, and in that notebook, journal. And not about anything. So yes, you could write about your day, etc. That's a personal journal. But what's important for developing critical thinking is you have a decision or some situation. Let's say you got a grade on the exam, and you would write down, this is the grade I got. This is why I think I got it. Then write, what did you expect to happen? What grade did you expect to get? So let's say that you got, what do you have in USA? Letters or numbers?
Both, but primarily letters like A, B, C.
Okay, so let's say you got a B, but you expected to get a C. So you journal, you write, okay, I got a B. This was the exam. This is what I got right. This is the feedback I got. I expected to get a C. Why did I expect to get a C? I didn't study as much as I thought. I didn't understand that and that lesson. When I was talking to my friend Johnny, he made some comments that were different than what I thought the lesson was about. So you write all of that. And then the final thing, you start writing about why do you think there's a difference between what happened and what you thought would happen. So you got a B, you thought you would get a C. So you have written why did you get the B? You wrote why you got a C, and now you start writing why is there a difference? Why did I get the B instead of a C? That day I felt really well. I slept well. I got out of the bed. Mom and dad they were very positive. I had good food. You write all of that. And then you keep writing journal like that, not just for grades, but anything. You have a decision to make. Write what do you think will happen, what has happened, and why the difference. And if you keep repeating that in one notebook or many notebooks, what you're doing is you're having a conversation with yourself. Second, you're learning to learn more about yourself, because if you read several entries like this, you will start seeing, oh, this is how I actually think. This is, this is how I behave when I perform really well. This is how I behave when I perform really bad. And if you learn that about yourself, then you can control, I don't want to say control your future, but you can control yourself. So on a day, let's say that you know when you perform well, and if you recognize that day is going like that, and you say, "Oh, today I'm going to work on the difficult stuff," or maybe you notice, "Oh, yeah. And then you might notice also, oh, this is how I behave when the day isn't so good. So maybe I should, take it easy. Maybe I shouldn't force too much studying today. Maybe I shouldn't do very, very important things today." And this is a very small practice. The only thing you need is a pen and notebook. I suggest pen and notebook, not on a computer or a device, because it's different. So your brain will react differently. If you just speak to the phone or type on the phone, your brain will not react the same as holding a pen and writing in your notebook. That's the only thing I would introduce, because it's cheap, it's easy, and it's so powerful, but it requires discipline. So you need to be doing it, every day, every week, for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, no matter how long. I have many, many notebooks like that.
I actually love that. Just reflecting on everything in your life with a critical standpoint, and just trying to see what went right, what went wrong, and how you can use that to improve your life, and then also kind of nurturing your mind and that kind of mindset. I absolutely love that. Everyone here should just go. I think you could even use paper. If you have paper, start right now, and then maybe get a notebook in a little bit. But all it takes is just a pen and something to write on. Let's talk about innovation. So your company, Pesec Global, helps companies kind of or cultivate a culture of innovation, which obviously helps their business success. And when you think of innovation, uh, there are a lot of things that come to mind. There are so many definitions. Can you define what innovation is for you?
Yeah, of course, of course. So I'll start with that and then go back to your question once more. So I define innovation as something new that creates value. Something new, when we say new, we mean to the innovator and to the person receiving this innovation, not necessarily to the world, because we as a mankind we have invented a lot of stuff, and it's difficult always being something that is unheard of. That's not the point. And the second one, value. There must be value on two sides. So the innovation must be useful to the customer, to the user, to the people like you and me, but the innovation must also create value for the innovator. So, innovator, yes, you might be coming up with new products, services, inventions, innovations just because it's so fun and rewarding, but for a business, they must be able to make some money on it as well. Otherwise, they won't be able to continue delivering these innovations. So, innovation, something new that creates value. Now, I just want to touch upon one small thing because this is to drive the attention of everybody listening and watching. So, Ben asked very good question, which is how do you define the innovation for yourself? What's very important is that a group of people, be it a company, business, or you're doing a homework or seminar together, as a group, you should have one shared definition. It's not important if everybody agrees, but you should have a shared definition when you're doing something together. Because if you're working from completely different definitions, then everybody is going to have completely different expectation of the work and the quality of work and what is actually the ultimate outcome objective. So it's very important as a group from business to team to have shared definition, be it innovation, strategy, work, whatever. So that is something very powerful. So thank you, Ben, for actually subtly highlighting that.
I definitely see the importance of making sure that there's a shared definition is kind of a core to innovative team success. And on that note, when you think of innovation, you generally think of engineers, entrepreneurs, uh, inventors. You don't really think of artists. You don't think of janitors. You don't think of school projects. So, is it true that innovation can only be applied in like these STEM fields?
No. I'll start short and then bigger. So there are this prejudices or stereotypes for both innovators and inventors or entrepreneurs that they're just for special kind of people with special kind of backgrounds, and I don't subscribe to that line of thinking. So in my experience and in my strong belief, everybody should have the right to innovate because innovation is process of bringing idea into life, of transforming idea into a business. And in my opinion, everybody should have the right to do that, and in my experience everybody can do it. Of course there are differences in, let's say, personal potential or private attunement. Some people are better in some areas, and that's perfectly normal, but that doesn't mean that there's someone who is forbidden from innovating. That is very exclusionary, and I would say, it's not good line of thinking. So it's important to remind each other that everybody everybody can be innovative. Now, how much innovative or in what part of the innovation journey, that's up for discussion. But one person doesn't have to do everything. So that's also an important reminder.
True. And yeah, definitely there's no ban on innovation for everyone but entrepreneurs or engineers or inventors. All right, so just on that, we know that innovation isn't just exclusive to these STEM fields. And let's talk about the kids listening, the majority of which are in school. how can they, on a small scale, innovate in their everyday projects, in their everyday extracurriculars, maybe their jobs, side jobs?
Okay, okay. I'll try to keep this short. So, first thing that I suggest everybody listening and trying that in whatever are you a young person doing that in school on a side job or an adult doing it in a business. First, you must differentiate between having a thought and having an idea. A thought is something, when you shower and you get this brilliant thought, oh, maybe I should do this or that. That's fine. That's the beginning, but that's not an idea. So, what you need to take with these thoughts and you need to refine them into ideas. How do you do that? Well, take a piece of paper or something like that and write it down. And you need two elements to make it an idea. You need to write who is this idea for and what does it do? So, let's say, for example, you like going to the beach, but it's difficult to carry money. Like if you go to the beach and you want to take a swim, you don't want to have coins or bills in your pocket. So maybe you have this brilliant thought. Well, how about I had a bracelet with a chip and I could just pay with a chip. Okay, that's a thought. Now you need to sit down and you need to start writing down who is this for. It is for people that want to go to the beach but don't want to carry a wallet with them. Okay, what does it do? Well, it's a bracelet with a chip that's connected maybe to bank account and it allows you to pay. Now, I'm not saying this is good or bad idea, but this is how you actually go from having a thought to having an idea. Why is that important? It's important because you want to move it from your head and put it on paper or somewhere else, because then you create something that we call an artifact, an object that you can discuss, share with others, and say, what do you think about this idea? Can you give me your comment? You manage to take it out and put it into something tangible. Because remember, what's in your head, others don't see, and they cannot read your mind. And that's it. I remember that, especially as a kid, I found it so frustrating because in my mind I had this fantastical visions and ideas, but when I tried to say it out, people just didn't get it. And the key to that is this exercise of actually putting it down. You can write, you can use words, you can draw, do whatever. Just put it out there. That's your starting point. So then when you have an idea, my big suggestion is, especially because you probably don't have a lot of savings or access to a lot of resources, is start by finding something similar to your idea. So you have this idea, try to find something that is almost the same or very, very close to your idea of product or service or something. Look it up online, go to the library, look in the supermarkets, depending on your idea, and find something that is similar. And then when you have found that, look, look at the people who are buying that. Why am I saying that? Because that is the fastest and cheapest way to test your idea. Because if there is something similar, then you don't need to make the whole thing. You want to learn why are people buying that? What for? What are they doing with that? How much money are they spending on that? You can observe them, you can have conversations with these people, you can figure out what do they like about that product, what do they don't like about that product. That doesn't cost you anything except your time and a little bit of confidence, because you might feel, oh, this is so scary, talking to people. Maybe they will be rude. Maybe they will say something nasty, or why would they talk to me? You would be surprised how many people are happy to share if they're really interested into something. So back to the example of bracelet for paying at the beach. Let's say that you're at the beach and you start approaching people and having a conversation around that. Of course, some of them would just want to rest and have no conversation with you. But some would be like, oh, yes, I usually fix that by having a purse. And I carry my purse, and this is the problem of carrying purse. Ta, 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 ta. And you take little notes, and that doesn't cost again anything, but you learn so much. And that's very important, because innovation starts with a potential customer. It doesn't cost anything to speak with those people, to observe, to make notes, but it helps you improve and refine your idea very quickly and very inexpensively, which I guess is a little bit of an advantage when you're younger and then don't have a lot of savings. Is that making sense?
That does make sense. And I came up with a question here. These things that you talked about with writing down ideas, asking people about these ideas, they're all free things to do, they're all accessible things to do. But a big obstacle is fear of failing an idea, fear of talking to strangers, fear of strangers walking away from you. How do you get over those fears?
So obviously, since you have a younger audience, so I'm you need to be careful, of course, from that perspective. So please don't approach people that you don't feel secure around, especially if you're a younger side. So it's good to be accompanied by an adult. So I'm not talking about those fears. So please be careful about that. I'm talking more about fears around, I have an idea. How do I approach someone? So, first, what's important to remind yourself, you're working on an idea that you believe could be valuable to someone. So you're not going to them because you're asking them, something back. You will not try to sell them something that's worthless. You will not try to sell them anything. You're approaching them because you want to learn something so you can create more value for them. When you remind yourself of that, it's much easier. You should feel already more comfortable and easier to approach people because you're not trying to sell them or force them into anything. You're just trying to understand how they use a product or service so you can help them use it even better. That's really powerful, in your head. I think a little bit of fear is good because that means you care. If you feel no fear at all, maybe you don't care about this idea. So maybe you should find something else. Sometimes we say I'm afraid, but you're not really afraid of going and speaking with people because of that, but because you might be afraid that your idea is a bad idea or that your idea isn't something that people will want. But that is the type of fear that we must overcome because I like to say, spend ideas, don't spend money. So ideas instead of money. Ideas are free. You can always come up with new ideas. What you want to do is when you work with ideas, remember what I said, put them on a paper. You want to rip those papers apart. You are the innovator, not that paper. So you will come up with new ideas, not that paper. So that is why you don't have to be afraid. Another fear very common with innovators is, oh, what if I don't do this and it never comes back? Maybe this is once in a lifetime. Well, there are opportunities like that, but in most cases, if it's good, it will come back. So as long as you're testing ideas and coming up with new ideas, if something was really good, it will come back. So you don't need to be afraid, that you missed out on an opportunity of a lifetime. When you get the cake, eat as much cake as you need or can eat. You don't need to eat the whole cake at once just because it's there. You will be sick.
More cake to eat later on. So let's talk about another thing that kind of revolves around what you do now, which is helping companies innovate. So let's pretend I'm the CEO of a toilet paper company. We're introducing a new line of toilet paper. It's eco-friendly. It's softer than everyone else. It's cheaper than everyone else. I'm still failing though. What are the biggest reasons why companies try to innovate but ultimately don't succeed?
Well, unfortunately or sadly, the number one reason hasn't really changed for a number of years, even though we know what's the number one reason that new products fail. In great majority of cases, more than 50% of reasons why new product or service failed is because a company made something nobody wants to pay for. So that remains number one reason. And that's why I said, if you remember back when you asked me if you're a kid, how would you go around? And I said, look for something similar and start speaking with people that are buying something similar because that means there's demand. when there is demand, then it's easy to meet it. So in case of this CEO with the toilet paper, maybe they looked, okay, there are other toilet papers, we're gonna be softer and cheaper, and therefore that must be selling really well. But what if you went and do customer interviews, speak with people that are actually buying toilet paper, and you find out that price and softness of toilet paper aren't the two most important decision criteria. So that is why you need to speak with customers to find out what is it that they value most about toilet paper, and then come up with a new toilet paper product line that aims at that. So right now sensibilities are changing. For example, people are paying more and more attention to sustainable products. They're not just looking at the price or softness or something like that. So the easiest way to fix building something nobody wants is to continuously speak with customers. Now, I must warn you, younger audience probably won't run into that too early, but it's good to warn anyway. There's a difference between giving people what they say they want and creating something that you think they want. And it's a very subtle difference, but never ask people, would you like this? Would you buy my product? There's no reason for them to say no. Because you're a kid, they might say yes just because they don't want to hurt your feelings. They would be, oh yes, yes, of course, I mean, of course, yes, yes, yes. So what's more important, and again why I advise you to look for similar solutions, is because you look at the past behavior of people. Are they buying it right now? How are they using it right now? So when you have your idea and you talk to people, always ask them questions that are in the past. How did you do that? Why did you do that? How much money are you spending on that? How are you using that product? We say like this: innovators innovate, customers validate. So innovators' job is to come up with an idea, but customers will say with their money, is that good idea?
That makes a lot of sense, and that's super true about asking the right questions, not asking questions like, "What do you want this?" But asking more directed, thoughtful questions. My last question to you, Mr. Pasek: what's your pitch? You have a 30-second pitch to all the kids out there who have an idea or have a thought, and they want to turn it into an idea. They want to go do the development and go make something out of it. Or if anything, just learn from the experience. What's your pitch to them to get them to just do it?
30 seconds, start now. First, start an idea notebook. Write down everything that comes to you. When you wake up 3 in the morning, 11 p.m., whatever, write everything down. Keep that notebook, use it for the rest of your life. Number two, you have an idea, write it down, find something similar, study it really well. Number three, don't just read, act, take action. Find people that are spending money on something that's similar to your idea and learn why. Number four, don't be afraid. Nobody is going to steal your idea. You are the person that can make or break that idea. Never forget that. Number five, you don't need to do everything yourself. Once you learn what the idea is about, you can start asking for help. People will help you. Don't forget that. Some will help you more, some will help you less. Number six, find someone who has done it, befriend them, and ask them for advice. Always remember the context of their advice. I'll stop here. I think 30 seconds are over.
That was excellent. I loved how you set that up, and it is just so important to. And I loved throughout this interview that you had all these like really actionable pieces of advice, not just motivational stuff, but also actionable things that you can do to help you become more innovative, to help you become a better critical thinker, and to help you really successfully innovate. Thank you so much, Mr. Pasek, for coming on the show today.
Benjamin, thank you for having me. I had so much fun, and I hope that everybody listening this tries at least one thing that we talked about. And thank you for all the great questions.